It was just a regular afternoon when the chaos began. The sun hung low over the city, casting long shadows on the pavement as people rushed home after work. On the crowded streets of downtown, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until a sound shattered the calm. A commotion outside a local cafe had caught the attention of everyone nearby. Officer Brad Jenkins, a seasoned cop with a long history of aggressive arrests, had just pulled over a black car on suspicion of speeding. He approached the vehicle, his hand resting on his holstered gun. As he neared the car, he saw a young girl, around 16, sitting in the passenger seat. Her face was calm, but her eyes were wide, nervous, as her father, an older black man, sat in the driver's seat. "License and registration!" Jenkins barked, his tone demanding. The young girl, who appeared unbothered at first, reached over to grab the glove compartment. As she did, Jenkins' hand moved quickly, grabbing her wrist firmly. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. The girl froze, her body tensing up, but she tried to speak calmly. "I'm just getting the registration. My dad's the driver. We were just—" Before she could finish, Jenkins yanked her out of the car with force, throwing her onto the pavement. "You're not above the law!" he spat, his hands gripping her arms as she struggled to stand. "Stop! What are you doing?" The man in the driver's seat shouted, his voice trembling. "She's just a kid!" But Officer Jenkins didn't listen. His anger had taken over. "I'm arresting you for resisting and being a public nuisance," he said, as he forced the girl to the ground. He twisted her arms behind her back and cuffed her with little care for the pain he was causing. The father, now frantic, yelled again, "Let her go! She hasn't done anything wrong!" His hands gripped the wheel, but he was powerless to do anything from inside the car. The scene quickly gathered attention from bystanders. But no one dared intervene. Jenkins had built a reputation for himself. His aggression, his pride in maintaining control over situations, and the fear he instilled in those around him. People watched, some recording with their phones, but most just stood there, frozen. Jenkins' actions weren't new. There were whispers in the community about his rough methods, his tendency to overstep boundaries. But today he had made a critical error. His victim wasn't just another citizen. The girl on the pavement was Naomi Williams, the daughter of an FBI agent, one of the Bureau's most respected officers. And Naomi's father, Special Agent Elijah Williams, was not someone to be messed with. As Jenkins shouted instructions to the crowd, the father, still inside the car, reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. His eyes narrowed in determination. The moment he tapped the screen, he wasn't just dialing anyone, he was calling the one person who could bring real consequence. Meanwhile, Naomi, who was on the ground struggling under Jenkins's control, couldn't help but feel the weight of what was happening. It wasn't the first time she had experienced racial profiling. It had happened before, and it wasn't something she had ever gotten used to. But this time, she couldn't just remain quiet. "Get off me," Naomi muttered through clenched teeth, pushing herself up against Jenkins' grip. Her heart was racing, her nerves buzzing with the sheer adrenaline of the moment. This wasn't just any cop, this was someone who had crossed the line. "Shut up, girl," Jenkins hissed, tightening his grip. "You'll regret this." But what Jenkins didn't know, what he could never have known, was that the person who was about to intervene wasn't just another civilian. This wasn't some random onlooker. Naomi's father had been trained for years to handle situations far more dangerous than this one. As Jenkins prepared to drag Naomi to his patrol car, a voice came from behind. "Is there a problem here, officer?" Jenkins turned around to see a figure walking toward him. The crowd parted as the man made his way to the scene. It was Agent Elijah Williams, Naomi's father. His voice was calm, but it carried the authority of someone who had spent his life fighting for justice. Jenkins froze for a moment, his hand still gripping Naomi's arm. The recognition hit him too late. Agent Williams' gaze locked with Jenkins, a calm storm brewing behind his eyes. "Let my daughter go," Elijah said, his voice carrying across the tense air. "Now." Elijah Williams's presence was like a sudden storm on a calm day. His voice, firm and commanding, had the effect of bringing the entire scene to a standstill. Officer Jenkins, still holding Naomi's arm with a tight grip, hesitated when he saw the unmistakable authority in Elijah's eyes. He recognized the man standing in front of him all too well. Elijah Williams wasn't just any man. He was a respected FBI agent, known for his work in tackling organized crime. His reputation had spread far and wide, not just for his skill but for his unwavering sense of justice. It was in his blood. He had spent years fighting for people who had been wronged. But today, it was his own daughter who needed him. "Let her go, officer," Elijah repeated, stepping forward. Jenkins took a step back, confused. I'm just doing my job here," he stammered, suddenly aware of the gravity of the situation. His posture faltered, and his confidence began to waver under the weight of Elijah's calm but intense gaze. "You've done enough, Jenkins," Elijah said, his tone unwavering. He stepped closer, his eyes still locked on the officer who was now visibly sweating. "Now, release my daughter. You've made a mistake." Naomi, who had been silent until now, looked up at her father with a mix of gratitude and concern. She could see how Elijah's presence was shifting the power dynamic. But she also knew the game wasn't over. Not yet. Jenkins slowly, reluctantly, loosened his grip on Naomi's arm. He knew he couldn't afford to escalate things any further, not with Elijah Williams in front of him. I'm just following protocol, sir." "She was resisting arrest," Jenkins muttered, trying to justify his actions. Naomi, now free from his hold, stood up and brushed herself off. The anger in her eyes was unmistakable. "Resisting arrest. You dragged me out of the car for no reason," she snapped. Elijah placed a hand on her shoulder, urging her to stay calm. He turned his attention back to Jenkins, whose face had gone pale. Elijah knew that the situation could still spiral out of control. The truth was, Jenkins had violated Naomi's rights, but in his position, it wouldn't have been easy to make that point stick, at least not yet. But Elijah was ready. He'd had enough. "You're not going to get away with this, Jenkins," Elijah said, his voice low but strong. "I'm filing a formal complaint, and it won't be just with your department. It'll go all the way up the chain of command. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here today." Jenkins's face flushed with fear. "You can't do that," he muttered, his voice trembling. "I'm a cop. I've got connections." Elijah's eyes darkened. "You're about to find out just how much that'll help you." Just as Jenkins opened his mouth to respond, another voice echoed through the crowd. It was the police chief, arriving on the scene. He had been called to deal with the escalating situation. "What's going on here?" The chief's gaze flicked between Jenkins and Elijah, noting the tension that filled the air. "Ask your officer," Elijah said, his tone sharp. "This is the officer who arrested my daughter on baseless charges." The police chief's face hardened as he turned to Jenkins. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice stern. Jenkins stammered, but he knew the game was up. I thought she was resisting," he muttered, but the uncertainty in his voice was clear. Elijah's hand tightened into a fist. This wasn't just about his daughter. This was about holding corrupt officers accountable. The chief was silent for a moment before responding. "Get Jenkins inside. We'll review the body cam footage." Jenkins's face went even paler. He had no idea the damage was about to come for him. As the officers began to escort Jenkins into the station, the crowd dispersed. Elijah turned to Naomi, who was still visibly shaken, but now relieved. She looked at her father, seeing the calm resolve in his eyes. "Thanks, Dad," she said, her voice soft. Elijah smiled, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. This isn't over yet, sweetheart, but you're safe. And that's all that matters. But the truth was, this was just the beginning. The next few days were a whirlwind for Jenkins. The body cam footage had been reviewed, and his brutal handling of Naomi was undeniable. The complaints Elijah filed weren't just ignored, they became a wake-up call. The public outrage grew, and Jenkins was swiftly placed on suspension, pending an investigation. But the consequences didn't end there. As the truth spread, internal affairs began to investigate the entire precinct. Jenkins wasn't the only one who had been involved in misconduct. Elijah's quiet, relentless pursuit of justice had started to unravel years of abuse within the police department. Officers were being questioned, and investigations opened into their actions. The scandal grew larger with each passing day. Elijah stood at the forefront of the fight, but he wasn't doing this for fame or recognition. He was doing it for his daughter and for the community. This wasn't just one officer, it was the system itself that needed to be held accountable. As for Naomi, she felt a sense of closure, knowing her father's fight wasn't in vain. She had witnessed firsthand how justice could rise above corruption, and for her, that was the most powerful revenge of all.